If you enjoy our channel, you'll now get exclusive and model-style photos of our female characters. Support us by becoming a Mega OGRE member. You'll help the channel stay alive and gain access to amazing photos. As an old railway line reopens as a tourist attraction, a seemingly innocent train ride turns sinister. With every dark tunnel it enters, a train car vanishes, without a trace. A ghostly voice whispers of a journey to the other side. Scooby-Doo and the gang board the train, unaware that getting off might not be an option. What lies beyond the tracks? The sky was thick with dark clouds when the mystery machine pulled up in front of the old Black Hollow station, a red brick building hidden among silent hills and rusted tracks. Reopened after decades of abandonment, the station now served as the departure point for a historical tourist train billed as a journey into the past. But something in the heavy atmosphere and the eerie silence hinted that this ride would deliver more than just nostalgia. I'm pretty sure the website said this would be a relaxing attraction, Shaggy muttered, eyes darting nervously. Relaxing for who? The ghost doing the welcoming? Scooby added, clinging to his friend with a trembling jaw. Fred walked ahead, leading the group with a tourist map in hand. Velma was focused on observing the tracks and the structure of the station, scribbling notes in her notebook. Daphne, with her camera in hand, was filming everything for a mystery vlog she had promised to launch that week. The platform was nearly empty, except for a few scattered passengers, mostly older couples and curious tourists. One figure caught Velma's attention. A man in a dark trench coat and wide-brimmed hat stood near the baggage car, whispering to himself. She approached discreetly, but he vanished behind a column before she could get closer. Velma, did you see that? Daphne asked, walking up. I did. And I know I'm not imagining things. Something's off here. The train's whistle blew sharply, interrupting any further suspicion. The conductor, a pale man with a thick mustache and vacant stare, greeted passengers with a monotone voice. Welcome aboard the Dark Hollow Valley Historical Train. Please remain seated. Avoid wandering during tunnel passages. And remember, do not look back. That was weird, even for Scooby-Doo standards, Fred muttered. As they settled into one of the central passenger cars, Scooby and Shaggy immediately opened a picnic basket they had packed, ignoring the rising tension. The train jolted forward with a screech of steel wheels, and the journey began. The landscape outside was gray and desolate, dense forests and abandoned fields. The mood was one of silent unease that no one could name. As they rounded a sharp curve, Scooby noticed something odd outside the window, an old metal sign, faded and rusted, that read, "Forbidden Line. Closed since 1953. Raggy, was that supposed to be there?" Scooby asked, pointing. Forbidden Line. Man, that sounds like an episode title, Shaggy replied with a nervous laugh. In the main cabin, Daphne was filming the empty seats ahead. When reviewing the footage on her phone, something made her blood run cold. A shadowy figure wearing a hat was sitting silently at the back of the car. But when she looked up, the seat was empty. Fred, look at this. He was right there. Now he's gone. Could be a glitch, or someone switching seats, but I've got a bad feeling, Fred said, standing up. Meanwhile, Velma struck up a conversation with an elderly woman seated nearby. Is this your first time on this ride? Velma asked. Oh, no dear. I've done this route before, long ago. But it was shut down after the accident. Accident? What accident? They never found the train cars, or the passengers. A low chime sounded through the cabin, attention passengers. We are approaching Hollowshade Tunnel. Please turn off reading lights and remain calm. Darkness swallowed the train. Emergency lights flickered on, red and pulsing. The usual clatter of the train became muffled, as if they had entered another world. Scooby and Shaggy clung to each other, shaking. I hate tunnels, man. Shaggy cried. Republican Maine too. A harsh, metallic sound sliced through the air. A loud thud echoed, and the train jolted violently. When they exited the tunnel, something was terribly wrong. The last car was gone. Passengers screamed in confusion. A crew member tried to calm them, but his pale expression revealed he was just as terrified. Fred rushed to the back of the train. The coupling was perfectly intact. No damage, no detachment. As if the missing car had never existed. "This is impossible," Fred muttered. "Not if it's some sort of digital illusion or advanced tech, but we're talking about a physical train car," Velma said, frowning. Daphne noticed something strange on her camera screen again, a tall shadow behind everyone standing in the aisle. A still, unmoving silhouette. Watching. Scooby growled at the corridor, baring his teeth. "There's someone there," he barked. But no one was there. As they searched the rear section of the train, Fred and Velma found a locked compartment. Using a tool from his belt, Fred pried it open. Inside were dusty boxes filled with old records, railway logs and black and white photos of similar trains. One photo showed a group of passengers, with blurred-out faces. The caption read, "Final Expedition, 1953. This is going too far. This train isn't just a tourist ride," Velma said. Suddenly, the overhead speaker crackled, and an unknown voice echoed through the cabin, deep and distorted. "Next stop, the other side. Prepare yourselves. Scooby dove under a seat. I don't want to go to the other side. I want to go home." Fred shut the file, face grim. "We need to find out what's going on, before someone else disappears." The train's conductor opened the cabin door. His face was pale, eyes unfocused as if staring into something invisible. He didn't respond when Fred called to him. He only whispered, like in a trance. "No one gets off, until the last tunnel is crossed." The gang exchanged worried glances. The train picked up speed. In the distance, another tunnel loomed. And everyone knew, the next car to vanish, could be theirs. The silence after the last tunnel was suffocating. A fog had begun to creep in through the narrow gaps between the train doors, cold and thick like breath in a freezer. The passengers, now fully aware that this was no ordinary ride, had gone quiet, too quiet. Some clutched their bags. Others stared at the floor, hoping not to attract whatever force was stealing the train car by car. Fred stood at the rear door of their coach, eyes locked on the empty track stretching behind them where the last car had been. He turned back to the gang, his jaw tense. "We have to move forward. Something, or someone, is behind this." Daphne nodded, clutching her camera tightly. "And we need to find out what happens before the next tunnel." "I say we bail now while we still can," Shaggy said, eyes wide with panic. "Like, grab Scoob, open a window, and jump into the bushes." "No jump." Scooby whined, clinging to Shaggy. Velma adjusted her glasses and stepped forward, holding up an old document she'd taken from the locked compartment. "This passenger manifest, look at the names. They're all dated from 1953. Every seat has a number. And here's the creepy part, some of the names match the people currently on board." "What do you mean?" Fred asked. Velma pointed to the older woman they'd spoken with earlier, now sitting silently near the window, her face pale and unmoving. "Mrs. Hollander. She's on the list. But that would make her over 100 years old. And according to a quick search, she died in 1953. The gang turned slowly to look at the woman. She smiled faintly, and then vanished. A gasp echoed through the cabin. Several passengers backed away, eyes wild with confusion. "We're not just riding a haunted train. We're sharing it with people who might already be dead." A loud clang interrupted them. It came from the front of the train. Fred grabbed the map of the train's layout. "The next car up is the dining car. We'll split into pairs, Scooby and Shaggy, you check the kitchen area. Velma, Daphne, and I will take the lounge side. Stay in contact. Right, because nothing ever goes wrong when we split up, Shaggy muttered as he followed Scooby, reluctantly pushing the heavy door to the next car open. The air in the dining car was colder. Tables were set for service, as if the staff expected a rush of customers at any moment. But the food was untouched. Plates were perfectly arranged, silverware polished, but no one was there. Then they noticed something even stranger. The cups were steaming. Aragi? Scooby's ears perked. That tea is hot. Shaggy leaned in, sniffing a teacup. Mint and honey. Someone just made this. Then, faint music filled the air. A violin. Slow, haunting, almost hypnotic. Maybe we should go back to the lounge side and wait for the others. But the door behind them slammed shut. The lights dimmed. And a shadow moved behind the bar counter. Scooby jumped into a cupboard. Shaggy dove under a table. The silhouette of a tall man in a faded waiter's uniform drifted across the floor without footsteps. His face was hollow, and his eyes were black voids. I was promised, a peaceful crossing, the ghost whispered, staring at a non-existent guest across the bar. I don't think he sees us, Shaggy whispered. Maybe if we stay quiet, he'll. The ghost turned suddenly. New passengers. Fresh ones. You don't belong. Scooby let out a howl and bolted from the cupboard, dragging Shaggy by the collar. They burst through the kitchen door into the pantry. Jars exploded as they crashed into shelves. Behind them, the ghost floated through the wall like mist, his voice rising. We're not just riding a haunted train. We're sharing it with people who might already be dead. A loud clang interrupted them. It came from the front of the train. Fred grabbed the map of the train's layout. The next car up is the dining car. We'll split into pairs, Scooby and Shaggy, you check the kitchen area. Velma, Daphne, and I will take the lounge side. Stay in contact. Right, because nothing ever goes wrong when we split up, Shaggy muttered as he followed Scooby, reluctantly pushing the heavy door to the next car open. The air in the dining car was colder. Tables were set for service, as if the staff expected a rush of customers at any moment. But the food was untouched. Plates were perfectly arranged, silverware polished, but no one was there. Then they noticed something even stranger. The cups were steaming. Aragi? Scooby's ears perked. That tea is hot. Shaggy leaned in, sniffing a teacup. Mint and honey. Someone just made this. Then, faint music filled the air. A violin. Slow, haunting, almost hypnotic. Maybe we should go back to the lounge side and wait for the others. But the door behind them slammed shut. The lights dimmed. And a shadow moved behind the bar counter. Scooby jumped into a cupboard. Shaggy dove under a table. The silhouette of a tall man in a faded waiter's uniform drifted across the floor without footsteps. His face was hollow, and his eyes were black voids. I was promised, a peaceful crossing, the ghost whispered, staring at a non-existent guest across the bar. I don't think he sees us, Shaggy whispered. Maybe if we stay quiet, he'll. The ghost turned suddenly. New passengers. Fresh ones. You don't belong. Scooby let out a howl and bolted from the cupboard, dragging Shaggy by the collar. They burst through the kitchen door into the pantry. Jars exploded as they crashed into shelves. Behind them, the ghost floated through the wall like mist, his voice rising. The conductor looked at them, his voice hollow. You're on borrowed time. This train is a vessel for those caught between life and death. And now you're aboard. He gestured to a chalkboard behind him. A list of numbers was written, crossed out one by one. Each car must be claimed. It's the balance. Unless someone breaks the cycle. How do we break it? Velma demanded. But the conductor was fading. Literally. Pieces of his image flickered in and out like a bad signal. I've stayed too long. They're coming. Outside, the gang saw something that froze their blood. Dark silhouettes were walking alongside the train in the fog. Dozens. Hundreds. Eyes glowing. Waiting. A gasp echoed through the cabin. Several passengers backed away, eyes wild with confusion. Dude, she just disappeared. Shaggy cried, nearly knocking over Scooby as he stumbled backward. She didn't scream. She didn't panic, Daphne whispered. It was like, she knew. Velma opened the dusty manifest again, flipping through the fragile pages. These names, they're all listed under what looks like a final destination log. Not arrival, departure from life. Fred exhaled slowly. We're not just riding a haunted train. We're sharing it with people who might already be dead. A loud clang interrupted them. It came from the front of the train. Fred grabbed the map of the train's layout. The next car up is the dining car. We'll split into pairs, Scooby and Shaggy, you check the kitchen area. Velma, Daphne, and I will take the lounge side. Stay in contact. Right, because nothing ever goes wrong when we split up, Shaggy muttered as he followed Scooby, reluctantly pushing the heavy door to the next car open. The air in the dining car was colder. Tables were set for service, as if the staff expected a rush of customers at any moment. But the food was untouched. Plates were perfectly arranged, silverware polished, but no one was there. Then they noticed something even stranger. The cups were steaming. Aragi? Scooby's ears perked. That tea is hot. Shaggy leaned in, sniffing a teacup. Mint and honey. Someone just made this. Then, faint music filled the air. A violin. Slow, haunting, almost hypnotic. Maybe we should go back to the lounge side and wait for the others. But the door behind them slammed shut. The lights dimmed. And a shadow moved behind the bar counter. Scooby jumped into a cupboard. Shaggy dove under a table. The silhouette of a tall man in a faded waiter's uniform drifted across the floor without footsteps. His face was hollow, and his eyes were black voids. I was promised, a peaceful crossing, the ghost whispered, staring at a non-existent guest across the bar. I don't think he sees us, Shaggy whispered. Maybe if we stay quiet, he'll. The ghost turned suddenly. New passengers. Fresh ones. You don't belong. Scooby let out a howl and bolted from the cupboard, dragging Shaggy by the collar. They burst through the kitchen door into the pantry. Jars exploded as they crashed into shelves. Behind them, the ghost floated through the wall like mist, his voice rising. Time doesn't stop here. Time doesn't forgive. They reached the end of the car, and just as the ghost reached out, the connecting door flung open. Fred appeared, grabbing them both. Move. Once the gang was together again, they blocked the door with a metal rod and caught their breath in the lounge car. Velma held up her phone. I recorded what the ghost said. Listen. They replayed the audio. The ghost's voice repeated a single phrase again and again beneath his monologue, almost like a chant, hidden in the background. 12 cars must cross. One by one. Until none remain. There are 12 cars on this train, Fred said slowly. One disappears in each tunnel, Velma added. That means, we have 10 left. And one of them, is ours, Daphne said. The lights flickered again. The intercom crackled. Next tunnel in 14 minutes. Remain seated. The crossing continues. The fog outside was now so dense that even the trees had vanished. They were riding through a world cut off from everything. Daphne had an idea. If this is some kind of purgatory ride, someone has to be controlling it. The conductor. We have to confront him. They moved cautiously toward the front engine. The door to the conductor's cabin was ajar, and inside they found something unexpected: dozens of clocks. Grandfather clocks, pocket watches, digital timers, all ticking in unison. And the conductor. Sitting perfectly still. Eyes closed. When Velma approached, his eyes snapped open. "I warned them not to reopen the line," he said. "It was sealed for a reason. They thought it would make a fun little attraction. They didn't understand what rides this rail." Fred stepped forward. "What is this train? Where are we going?" The conductor looked at them, his voice hollow. "You're on borrowed time. This train is a vessel for those caught between life and death. And now you're aboard." He gestured to a chalkboard behind him. A list of numbers was written, crossed out one by one. Each car must be claimed. It's the balance. Unless someone breaks the cycle. How do we break it? Velma demanded. But the conductor was fading. Literally. Pieces of his image flickered in and out like a bad signal. "I've stayed too long. They're coming." Outside, the gang saw something that froze their blood. Dark silhouettes were walking alongside the train in the fog. Dozens. Hundreds. Eyes glowing. Waiting. The train whistle blew again, low and long. Ahead, another tunnel yawned open like the mouth of a beast. The gang had only one car behind them now. If the pattern held, it would vanish next. Fred looked back. "We need a plan. Fast." Daphne's hands trembled on the camera. Velma whispered, "What if we're already too late?" The tunnel swallowed the front of the train. And behind them, the screams began. The scream tore through the fog like a warning shot, raw and jagged, rising from the rear car just as it vanished into the tunnel's dark throat. In the flicker of a moment, the final passenger car was gone. Where it had been seconds before, there was only empty track swallowed by the mist. The gang stood frozen, backs pressed against the inner wall of the lounge car, unable to look away. One more car gone. One more step toward something they still didn't understand. Fred clutched the handrail tightly, his knuckles white. Velma stared at the spot where the car had been, then turned to the others, voice low and trembling. "We're next." No one argued. The train lurched forward, as if the loss of the rear weight had thrown off its balance. Every window rattled. Every light flickered. Scooby-Doo whimpered, hiding behind the torn seat cushions, his ears flat, his eyes wide. Shaggy was pacing nervously in circles, biting his nails. Ivy had some crazy snacks, but this is the worst trip I've ever taken, man. Daphne turned off her camera. Her hands were shaking too much to keep filming. "We need answers. Not theories, not ghost stories, real answers. This isn't just a haunting. This is a ritual." Velma turned toward her. "Exactly. Someone, or something, is counting these cars. Every disappearance feels like a toll. Like a payment." "Payment for what?" Fred asked. "Why this train? Why us?" Before Velma could answer, the conductor's voice hissed through the intercom once again, this time slower, almost regretful. "Next crossing, approaches. 14 minutes. They didn't wait this time. Together, they pushed forward through the next door, entering what appeared to be an abandoned sleeper car. The walls were lined with old-fashioned compartments, their sliding doors closed, their numbers tarnished and faded. The air smelled of mildew and something older, something rotten beneath wood and velvet. Scooby paused at the threshold, sniffing the floor. He growled low. Shaggy tugged him forward. "Don't stop, Scoob. If something's hiding in here, I'd rather not meet it, thank you very much. Velma opened one of the cabin doors. Inside was a child's room, perfectly preserved, down to a cracked porcelain doll sitting on a pillow. She reached for the doll, but as soon as her fingers brushed it, the entire cabin filled with whispers. Dozens of voices. Disconnected. Urgent. She yanked her hand back. Silence. Fred reached for another compartment, but it was locked. Daphne opened the one beside it, and gasped. Inside, the air shimmered like heat waves, revealing a faint image of a man sitting on the edge of the bed. His face was gray, eyes sunken, wearing a conductor's cap from another era. He turned slowly toward them. His mouth moved silently, mouthing something none of them could hear. Then he dissolved like dust on the wind. Daphne stumbled back into Fred's arms. Did you see that? Fred nodded. He was trying to speak. A warning? They opened another door. This one was empty, except for a single word scratched into the glass of the window, judgment. Velma murmured, I don't think this is about ghosts. I think it's about reckoning. The people on this train, they weren't just passengers. They were chosen. Chosen for what? Daphne asked. To face something. Maybe their past. Maybe what they tried to run from. Scooby, who had wandered to the end of the car, suddenly let out a sharp bark. Our Fred. Guys. Come. They hurried to find him crouched beside the window at the far end of the sleeper car. Outside, in the fog, walking parallel to the train, was a girl. A young girl, no more than 10 years old. Pale. In a white dress. Her feet didn't touch the ground. She turned and looked directly at them. And smiled. Then she vanished into the mist. What was that? Shaggy whispered. A marker, Velma said. I think we're being watched. Not just by ghosts, but by something keeping score. They didn't stop. The next car was even stranger, what appeared to be a mail compartment, filled with sacks of letters, most unopened, stamped with dates from decades ago. Fred tore one envelope open and read aloud. To my son, if you ever find this letter, I'm sorry for what I did. I took something that didn't belong to me, and now I can't leave this place. They won't let me. Another envelope. Another confession. A pattern began to form. This whole train, Velma said, is like a moving courtroom. Every car reveals another piece of the puzzle. Regrets. Sins. Lies. Everyone who boarded this train brought something with them. And they're being judged. But we didn't do anything wrong, Daphne said. Fred didn't answer. Velma's voice lowered. Maybe we weren't chosen because of what we did. Maybe we're here to witness. Or to stop it. The train groaned again. Louder this time. Another tunnel loomed ahead. Closer now. The windows darkened. Shaggy grabbed Fred's arm. Dude, that's the next one. We're out of time. Fred looked at the group. We can't stay passive anymore. We need to get to the engine. Whoever, or whatever, is running this train, they're in there. If we wait for the final car, we disappear like the rest. Velma nodded. Agreed. But if the engine's under the same curse as the rest, what if it's not a person? Then we face it, Fred said. The tunnel opened wide, swallowing the front half of the train. The shadows inside it pulsed and shimmered, like living things. As the lights died one by one, the group held their breath. Then the sleeper car behind them disappeared. No sound. No explosion. Just a quiet blink, and it was gone. They were down to 7 cars. And they were next. The train no longer felt like a machine, it breathed. Every groan of the metal, every hiss of steam, was like the exhale of a beast. The walls warped slightly as if reacting to the presence of those who dared move closer to the engine. The gang pressed forward, their path lit only by flickering, golden bulbs hanging from the ceiling, swinging on their wires like dying fireflies. Behind them, 5 cars had already vanished into the fog and shadows. Only 6 remained. And the next one was theirs. They entered what should have been the observation car, but it was unlike anything they'd expected. The windows were gone, replaced with mirrors, hundreds of them, reflecting infinite images of themselves back and forth. In each reflection, the gang looked subtly different. Older. Sadder. Some of the reflections didn't mirror their movements at all. One version of Fred stared back at him with blood on his collar. Daphne's reflection had a bruise across her cheek. Scooby's double was completely still, his eyes black and hollow. The gang moved silently through the maze, each mirror whispering thoughts they weren't sure were their own. Velma stopped walking and whispered, "This isn't just glass. These are moments, memories, possible futures." Daphne reached toward one of the mirrors, and her hand passed through it. Instantly, she disappeared. "Daphne!" Fred shouted, rushing forward. But before he could reach her, the mirror solidified, and she was gone. Her reflection remained, standing still, looking outward, but it didn't move. It blinked once, then smiled eerily. Shaggy backed away, shaking his head. Nope, no thank you, this place is cursed. We're not even on Earth anymore, man." Scooby whimpered, hiding behind Velma as she examined the frame of the mirror Daphne had passed through. There were symbols carved into the glass, ancient ones, flickering faintly with red light beneath the surface. "This is a threshold," Velma said. "A test. Each of these mirrors, they're traps, maybe, or gateways. Someone, or something, is pushing us closer to a choice." Fred's voice broke. "We have to get her back." Velma nodded. "But not like this. Not through the mirrors. We go forward. She might be ahead." As they exited the car, the entire structure shuddered. A low sound began to rise, not metal, not wind, but a distant choral moan, as though the souls taken by the train were crying out from beneath the tracks. They passed into the next compartment, a chapel car. Red velvet pews stretched in long rows, all of them empty, save for one man seated at the front with his back turned. Organ music played from no source. Candles burned though no one had lit them. The air smelled of sulfur and roses. Fred hesitated, then stepped forward. "Excuse me." The man didn't move. Fred approached slowly. "Have you seen a red-haired girl come through here?" The man spoke without turning. "You've already lost her. The train doesn't take, it trades. Every car you pass demands something." "What kind of trade?" Velma asked. The man turned then, and his face was wrong. It was shifting constantly, like a slideshow of different versions of himself, young, old, angry, afraid. A memory. A friend. A truth. One way or another, the debt is paid. Shaggy grabbed Fred's arm. "Let's just go. Please." They moved around the man, and as they left the chapel, the man's body crumbled into ash, sucked backward like smoke into the organ pipes. In the next car, Daphne was waiting. But something was off. She stood still, her expression serene, hands folded neatly in front of her. Her eyes were not her own. Fred rushed to her and hugged her, but she didn't respond. Velma approached carefully. "Daphne, say something." Daphne tilted her head slowly. "One must always give something up to move forward." The train asked, and I answered. "Answered what?" Fred demanded. Daphne blinked. "Who are you when no one's looking?" Fred stepped back. "What does that mean?" But the train didn't wait. It screamed, an unnatural noise, a war cry from another dimension, and they were forced to move as the lights surged white and then red, the windows bursting into images of fire and fog. They ran through the door as the car they just left vanished into the void. Now 5 remained. And the engine loomed just 3 cars away. As they stumbled into the next section, they found themselves in a library car. Shelves filled with black books, each labeled with names they didn't recognize. Shaggy opened one at random. Inside were pages filled with text written in his handwriting. The others did the same. Every book contained their own writing, their thoughts, their regrets, things they had never spoken aloud. Velma opened hers to a page dated the day her parents divorced. She read the entry, written in her own words, "I blamed myself. I smiled like everything was fine. But I was angry. And I still am." Daphne opened hers and saw a single phrase repeated over and over, "If they really knew me, they wouldn't stay." Fred's was blank. But when he touched the page, words began to form. "You always lead because you're afraid. If you stop moving, someone might see you don't know where you're going." Fred dropped the book. Scooby didn't open his. Instead, he stared at the final pages of Velma's book, where something new had appeared in fresh ink. A map. A route forward. Velma snapped it shut. "Let's move. We're almost there." But as they reached the door to the next car, it locked. Behind them, the books began to burn. Not with flames, but with light. Blinding light. Each book pulsed like a dying heartbeat. Then, from within the shelves, figures began to step out. Themselves. Shadow versions. Emotionless. Hollow-eyed. Fred met his doppelganger head-on, tackling him back into the shelf. The shadow didn't fight, just whispered, "We are the weight you carry. And you cannot outrun yourself." Shaggy screamed as his double reached for him, but Scooby jumped between them, growling ferociously, knocking the shadow over the railing and into the mist beyond the car. Velma, trembling, slammed her book into her double's face, and the figure collapsed into ink. One by one, the shadows faded. The firelight dimmed. The door ahead unlocked. They crossed into the final car before the engine. And standing there, waiting for them, was the girl in the white dress. Again. Only now, she was surrounded by dozens of others, children, elders, men, women, all silent. All watching. The girl stepped forward. "The train is almost done. When the last car crosses, there will be nothing left but judgment." Fred's voice cracked. "Who are you?" The girl tilted her head. "We are the ones who never left. You must decide, do you ride the final car into darkness, or do you stop the train?" And then the floor began to shake. The engine was waking up. And the next tunnel was already in view. The tunnel yawned open ahead like the mouth of something ancient and hungry. Blacker than any before, it devoured the fog itself. The last 4 cars trembled on the tracks as if resisting the pull. Inside, Fred, Velma, Shaggy, Scooby, and Daphne, now eerily silent and blank-faced, stood in the final passenger car before the engine, staring at the rows of figures that had emerged from the mists, ghosts of forgotten passengers, remnants of lost souls, flickering like candlelight about to die. The girl in white stood among them, her face unreadable, her eyes bottomless. She reached out to Scooby-Doo, who cowered behind Shaggy, growling low but not running. She knelt before him, tilting her head. "You are afraid, but you remember," she whispered. "You still see the line between what is and what was." Velma stepped forward. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "What is this place? This train? It's not just haunted. It's alive." The girl stood. "The train is a judgment. A test built from memory and guilt. It follows those who carry regret and secrets too heavy to bear. They board it without knowing why. And if they cannot confront what they carry, they vanish. Daphne's voice returned then, soft and strange. I saw myself. In the mirror. Not who I am, but who I've pretended to be. It wouldn't let me leave until I admitted it. Fred stepped beside her, placing a protective arm around her shoulders. Then how do we stop it? How do we get off before the last tunnel takes us to? The girl looked toward the front of the car. You have to face the engine. What's in the engine? Shaggy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The one driving it, she replied, and the truth it protects. Velma turned to the others. Then that's where we go. Together. The group moved as one, pushing open the final door, entering the last car before the engine, an empty space filled with wind and dust, like a room outside of time. In its center stood a solitary figure facing the window, the conductor. Clad in a black uniform with a silver chain on his chest, he didn't move as they approached. But the lights flickered, and the train groaned louder than ever. Fred stepped forward. Are you the one behind this? The conductor turned slowly. His face was hollow, like a mask carved from ash. But his eyes, sunken, red-ringed, human, told another story. He looked exhausted. I am not your enemy, he said. I was like you. I boarded this train long ago, running from something. I stayed too long. I became part of it. Now I drive it, because no one else will. Why not stop it? Velma asked. Why keep sending people into the dark? Because they need it, he replied. The world above forgets. But this train remembers. Everyone who steps on board is given a chance to face what they hide. Some vanish. Some wake up. But if the train stops, the reckoning ends. And everything buried, remains buried. The ground shook violently. The tunnel was moments away. Then let us off, Daphne said. We've faced it. We've earned it. Have you? The conductor asked, eyes narrowing. Do you even know why you're here? He raised a hand, and suddenly the room was filled with visions, scenes flashing through the walls like a storm. Fred at a funeral, unable to cry. Daphne alone in her room, wiping away layers of makeup. Velma hiding grades she believed weren't good enough. Shaggy in his car, skipping his father's last call. Scooby, sitting by the door of a house long gone, waiting for someone who never returned. These are your ghosts, the conductor said. But facing them is not enough. You must forgive yourselves. The train screamed again. The front wheels entered the tunnel. The darkness closed in like a living shadow. Velma reached out. Then come with us. Leave the engine. Let it end. For a long moment, the conductor stared at her. Then he smiled, faintly. I can't. But you can. He stepped back. The controls lit up on their own. The brakes gleamed under a single light. Pull it, he said. If you're ready. Fred hesitated. Then looked at the others. They nodded. Shaggy held Scooby tighter. Velma moved to the console. Together, they pulled the lever. Screeching metal. Sparks exploding outside. The tunnel tore toward them like a wave, but the train slowed. Slower. Slower. Then, stopped. The silence afterward was deafening. The gang stood in the stillness, watching as the tunnel dissolved into light. One by one, the ghostly passengers behind them faded, smiling, released. Even the conductor, as he tipped his cap, crumbled into dust and vanished. The doors opened. Morning sunlight poured in. Fields. Trees. Real air. Real life. They stepped off the train into a grassy clearing, blinking against the light. No tracks behind them. No train. Just wind and the faint scent of iron. Fred turned to the others. We're back. Velma nodded. And we're different. Daphne smiled. Maybe now we know who we really are. Shaggy looked at Scooby. We still scared? Scooby said, tail wagging. We brave. As they walked away together, the earth rumbled faintly one last time, far off, below, like something ancient falling asleep again. The phantom train of the apocalypse was gone. Or perhaps, waiting.